So good evening, everyone. Sorry, and thank you for zooming in. You should see popping up on your screen here in a second, just a quick little pre-event survey. We just kind of use those to gauge the efficacy of our programs and things like that. So and it helps us provide more better events, if that kind of makes sense. So it should be launching on your screen here. And then while that's going, thank you for joining. My name is Olivia and I'm an AmeriCorps member with Conservation Nebraska's Common Ground program. This program aims to improve stewardship of Nebraska's natural resources by increasing knowledge and concern for the most important conservation issues facing our state. To make this happen, our focus is on providing volunteer opportunities, engaging community members, and continually improving local conservation practices, and providing educational opportunities like this webinar. Tonight, we will be learning how hunting and fishing, mostly fishing in this one, is an integral part of conservation. We have with us Larry Pape, the aquatic education specialist at Game and Parks, where he's worked for over 25 years, helping people understand and enjoy fisheries natural resources. A Nebraska native, Larry grew up hunting and fishing with friends and family throughout Nebraska and spent time on the family farm in Kansas. All over the outdoors led to careers in communications, education, and natural resource management. Larry has studied in Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin, where he earned a Bachelor of Science in Fisheries Management, and Nebraska, where he earned a Master of Science in Natural Resource Management. Before I hand it over to Larry, I just want to remind all participants that mics are muted and cameras are off, so we cannot see you. We already did the pre-event survey. This will also pop up at the end, as well as a feedback survey for us. Again, which is optional, but it just helps us do better. We will have a designated Q&A time towards the end, but the chat function will remain open. So if anybody has any questions along the way, feel free to dump them in there. And if we get a chance, we can answer them for you. And I will hand it over to Larry and we can get started.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad to be here. I've been introduced. My name's Larry Pape. I'm education specialist. The simple answer to that is I work for the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission, and I get paid to take people fishing and teaching them how to fish and teach them all about fish. And it's probably the best job in Nebraska as far as I'm concerned. And if you ever want to investigate jobs in the state of Nebraska, Game and Parks Commission, please feel free to talk to me. I'm a big cheerleader for us, and that's part of what I do. We're going to start tonight off with a quiz, and the quiz is, who owns the fish and wildlife in Nebraska? Now, the king is the top selection there, and that may seem like a really stupid answer, but in some parts of the world, that's not completely out of hand. There's parts of the world that the king, the czar, the shah, whatever, absolutely do own the wildlife, and molesting them or harassing the wildlife can have some pretty stiff penalties. Fortunately, in the United States, we know that's not true. But the other three choices, Nebraska Game and Parks Commission, those of us who manage it, do we own the fish and wildlife? I mean, we'll take care of them and stuff, but are we the actual owner of them? What makes more sense is actually the people who own the land where the fish and wildlife live. But are they the actual owner of fish and wildlife? Is the owner of a prairie also the owner of the pheasants that reside there? Well, they can move off, so of course they're wildlife. But how about a pond in the middle of there with a fish living in it? It's isolated, it's his, right? Is he the owner of that wildlife, that fish in his pond? Or silly answer would be the people of Nebraska. All of us, do we own it? Well, that silly answer is actually the honest truth and is the answer. The people of Nebraska own the fish and wildlife in the state. And that's a very important premise. The people in Iowa own the fish and wildlife in Iowa, same in Kansas, same in Colorado. And in some respects, we all own each other's wildlife. The motivation for this is, we talked about a little bit about the kings in other countries that own the wildlife. Well, in North American model of management, and I encourage you to look into this more deeply because it's a very important and very interesting model that started with Theodore Roosevelt and John Muir and several other great men of the 19th century. And these were sportsmen who were concerned about the extinction of wildlife, specifically things like the passenger pigeon that we don't see because it's extinct. but things that were coming close to extinction, like elk, like wood ducks, like turkeys, those things we take for granted now and see on a, and know that they're here on a regular basis. The men of that time, of the 19th century, the men and women of that time were concerned about it. And they created this principle. It's called the North American Model of Wildlife Conservation. It really rests on two very strong principles. And one is the fish and wildlife belong to all US citizens. And this is very important. That means you or I are the ones who have the ultimate ownership of all the wildlife, all the elk, all the pheasants, all the fish in the waters, the monarch butterflies. We are the possessors. We are the ones who have ownership of those animals. The second very strong premise of this North American model of wildlife conservation is that fish and wildlife should be managed so their populations are present forever. We're concerned because of the extinctions that happened in the early 19th century, and we don't want that to happen again. And that's why we have concerns over things like the Salt Creek tiger beetle right here in Lincoln. We are in charge of managing those populations forever, whether they be small or whether they be large. So now, well, what the question begs, who manages the fish and wildlife in Nebraska? We know it's not the king. Is it Nebraska Game and Parks Commission? Well, that is the answer. We're not going to quiz you anymore. Nebraska Game and Parks Commission and the people of the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission are the managers of the wildlife, also including the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. There's also compartments of like the natural resource districts in Nebraska, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We all have a part in managing them, but Nebraska Game and Parks is the key. The people who own it are the ones who let us know whether we're doing a good job and the wants and needs of the people. So you as owners, you and me as owners of it, actually are capable of coming to the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission and letting us know what your wants and needs are and what your feelings are. And we're very open to those conversations. As a matter of fact, we are required to have those conversations. I want to give a shout out here to the owners of the land where the fish and wildlife live. While they're not technically the ones in charge of managing it, the owners of the of the lands where those fish and wildlife live, that includes us here in town who have a yard and may have some flowers for the monarch butterflies. They are the ones who get a big shout out for the help in conservation of wildlife. The farmers who tolerate the deer nibbling on their corn and reducing their crop numbers, the people who have streams running through their land who make sure that they don't get polluted for the fish there. Those people also have a huge part in the management. But overall, Nebraska Game and Parks Commission is the ones in charge. So then that isn't for free. We all get paid because, we get paid like any other person in any other job. So those of us in Game and Parks, we require payment. So who pays for that? The simple answer is the people of Nebraska do. Most specifically, most of the dollars for wildlife management, whether it be large or small, come from fishing and hunting permits. Fishing and hunting permits pay for a bulk of direct payment for the management, understanding the life histories and making sure that things can prosper. We also have something that started back in the 30s and was reinforced in the 70s. There's an excise tax on hunting and fishing products. So when you go to the store, the Cabela's or the sports shop, and you buy a roll of fishing string, there's actually that fishing string, when it was manufactured and was shipped out of the manufacturer, had a tax paid on it. That tax then goes to Washington, and then it comes back to the states, depending on how many fishing licenses we sell. But ultimately, what that comes down to is hunters and anglers are the ones who pay for a lot of the resources that we know, to support wildlife. That's also leveraged by city parks, by local landowners who contribute. And so it's a very contributory thing, but it all begins with hunting and fishing permits of the state. So Nebraska Game and Parks, and we have a lot of animals to take care of. We're broken down into several different divisions. We have law enforcement, we have the administrative stuff that takes care of things like paychecks and land acquisition and stuff. But with respect to actually managing things, managing wildlife, we have two divisions. One is the wildlife division, and one is the fisheries management division, or the section, and that's where I reside. That fisheries management section, we'll just talk about that because that's what I know most about. Wildlife is very similar. The fisheries management section is broken down into four major components. We have fisheries management, and we'll talk little bit about that. We have fish production, those are the people who raise fish. We have fisheries research, those are the people that try to understand what's going on and help fisheries management and production do their thing. And then we have education and outreach, and that's me, and in the state of Nebraska, one other person who does outreach. Ultimately, what I want to come around to is reinforcing that these are all things that you could consider as careers. Fish and wildlife careers are absolutely fantastic, and it's a great way to come to work and do what you love every day. I want to then talk about, just specifically to give you an idea what we do in fisheries and see what these jobs are all about. So I'm going to run some videos, and the first video is on the fisheries management. And fisheries management takes care of the abundance of fish in lakes and streams, takes care of looking at the health of those fish and lakes and streams. It also takes a look at the lake and stream quality, whether the water quality is there, whether the fish habitat's there, whether it's a good enough place for also people to go and enjoy. And then also angler communications. Big part of fisheries management is working with the public and seeing what they want and understanding what they want, and seeing the public is a feedback to us and lets us know a lot of times when things are out of kilter. So angler communications is huge. I'm going to run a short video here, and it's talking to Daryl Bauer, and it's all about fisheries management. And so I'll be back in a bit.
Another hard day at the office. Hey, my name's Daryl Bauer, and I'm a fisheries biologist for Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. And some days here on the lakeshore is my office. I love being able to get out of the office and work in the outdoors. Some days I even get paid to go fishing too. What's a fisheries biologist? Well, that's a scientist who studies fish. And I've been working as a fisheries biologist for 25 years now. But even before that, I was a fisherman. I've been fishing all of my life. So I can tell you a lot of stories about using a lot of different tools to catch fish. And sometimes those tools can be real simple. Something as simple as a string with a hook on the end, like a pop can caster. Or you can use a variety of fishing rods and reels. Or in my job, sometimes we use nets to capture fish, or even big expensive boats. But the point is all those tools will work, and sometimes the simplest tool is what works best. When we're collecting pallid sturgeon on the Missouri River, just a plain old set line with a series of hooks on it, and those hooks baited with night crawlers, is the best way for us to catch pallid sturgeon. That works better than all the nets and boats that we use. Or when we're collecting largemouth bass, sometimes we want to see what those fish have been eating. And there's nothing expensive that's needed there either. We can just use.
I'm going to stop this because I've got a message that says no sound on video. Is that true for everyone?
I can hear you on my side, but are any of the other participants not having audio?
Okay.
We can send an email tomorrow too with a link to that video for those of you that can't hear
Let's say
it.
they can hear. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed with the video and assume that we just had one person that was an anomaly. So here we go again.
Some plastic tubes to put into the throat of those fish and then see what's in their stomach so we know what food those largemouth bass are eating. So a variety of tools work, some of them simple, some of them more complicated, but you do what it takes to catch fish. And I've learned over the years that it takes a variety of science skills and outdoor skills to be the best fisheries biologist and the best angler that I can be.
All right. Well, Daryl Bauer is a good friend of mine, and he's a fantastic fisheries management person, and he's still here. And he's, if you ever have questions about fish management, about anything fisheries, he is actually our outreach specialist as well. And so if you call the agency and you have questions, you're more than likely to end up with Daryl or myself. And if you have questions about where to go and how to fish, Daryl's an absolute wonderful resource. And if you have any questions about histories or careers in fisheries management, he's a good person to go to. He's very honest, very open and to meeting you. A second section that we is very important to us is our fish production. And we have 5 state hatcheries in Nebraska. And then we also have a lot of additional private hatcheries. These hatcheries produce the different kinds of fish we need because the resource is not quite capable with natural reproduction in a lot of cases to keep up with fishing pressure or even natural pressure from, the different kinds of predation and natural mortality. So we need hatcheries to grow things like catfish and walleye and northern pike, and in some places, in cases like bass, even bluegill, to reinvest, to restock our lakes and streams. The private hatcheries, of course, help supply a lot of things like our trout, and we depend a lot on private hatcheries for a lot of our trout. I'm going to start a video here and shows you a little bit about what fish production is all about. And this is from Lake McConaughey, and it's all about spawning walleye. And this is an activity I absolutely love being involved with. It's a lot of work, but it's really exciting, and it's done every spring right around the 1st of April. I'll give you a watch and see what they do.
Walleye spawn every early spring along the rocks of Nebraska's dams. Anglers may camp on the rubble throughout the night to catch a brute or two. At Lake McConaughey on April 8, 2010, this lunker, caught by Brad Cochran of Imperial, was just 2 ounces shy of being a new state record. During the spring spawn, Game and Parks fisheries biologists set nets to catch walleye or send up walleye with a mild electrical shock. The fish do survive these collection methods and the later taking of their eggs and sperm. After capture, the fish are placed into bins or water cribs. The females are separated by whether their eggs are already spent into the lake, ripe, or green, which means the eggs will soon be ripe. The green fish may be held a day or two until the eggs ripen, or they're simply turned loose. Eggs and sperm are massaged out of the fish. Water is added, and fertilization is further achieved by stirring the contents with a turkey feather. Then a Fuller's earth mixture is added to coat the eggs. This keeps them from clumping or sticking together. Next, the eggs are placed into plastic cylinders called jars and rinsed by a unit called the sow. Then the eggs are taken to our hatcheries. Fry will emerge in about 2 weeks, feed briefly on their yolk sac, and then get released into our lakes. Some of the hatch is allowed to age 40 days to fingerling size before being stocked into lakes. Many of our lakes have a low rate of natural walleye reproduction, so the stocking program is a big help in maintaining good walleye populations for anglers. Here's a little bit of trivia. In the spring of 2010, the egg collection work was very impressive at Lake McConaughey. On the night of April 8th, 359 females were netted. This was a record for one night on any Nebraska lake and shattered the old one-night netting number by the dozens. Also, how many walleye eggs are in a quart? About 120,000. In 2010 at Lake McConaughey alone, 338 quarts of eggs were collected. Times that by 120,000 per quart, and you get just over 40.5 million eggs. Survival of the eggs varies from jar to jar, anywhere from 50 to 90%, but at least 70% survival is the norm. So, the next time you catch a walleye, just remember, the fish you caught might have once been an egg from Lake McConaughey that was raised in a Nebraska hatchery.
All right. It makes me want to get ready to go. That's one of my favorite activities every year, going out and collecting walleye eggs, either at McConaughey or Sherman Reservoir, sometimes at Harlan County Reservoir. And it's hard work, it's cold, it's in the middle of the night, but man, fisheries managers eat that stuff up, and we just really enjoy that. One of the big important sections or aspects of fisheries management is research. And we do this to improve our fisheries management. And that's how we know what kind of fish will survive in a what kind of environment, what works where. We do this and we depend on others' research across the country. You know, a study of a bass in Nebraska is very similar to a study of bass in South Carolina. So we share a lot of those things, and our research is very much a national thing. We're very dependent on University of Nebraska, Lincoln and Kearney, and the students there, especially the master's degree students who do specific projects that help us understand, you know, what fish work, where, when, and how. I'm going to show you a quick video of a research project that was done here within Nebraska by our management team. And actually, I know this one actually within the next 2 weeks.
It's typical weather for early March, cool and windy, but it's also when northern pike come into shallow waters along shoreline rock to spawn. Nebraska fisheries biologists are checking nets and electrofishing up pike to tag them for a population study. Any shocked fish are stunned for a short time but soon recover to resume cruising the lake. In the springs of 2010 and 2011, Game and Park stocked a total of 91,000 fingerling pike into this new impoundment, Lake Wanahoo, just north of Wahoo. Boy, have they grown fast. Many of the catches exceeded 24 inches, at least one female was 31 inches long. As of early March 2012, the lake was still not open to public fishing or other recreational use. This science was done in advance of an opening to develop an estimate of pike numbers. From the original stocking numbers, a survival rate of at least 10% is hoped for, could be more. Pike typically inhabit more western and northern Nebraska lakes, so biologists are looking forward to seeing how the fish do in east central Nebraska and the impact future anglers will have on the population. Down the road, anglers catching a tagged pike will see what appears to be a 4-inch piece of wiring cable on the back of the fish. This Floy tag contains an email address and phone number. Whether the fish is kept or released, Game and Parks will ask anglers to help with the study by reporting fish length, date of catch, and of course the number on the tag. This information will be useful in future management of the species at Lake Wanahoo, as to whether there will be a need for further stockings or if natural spawning will be sufficient, but mostly to establish regulations for things like keeper size.
Tag number 1566.
So yeah, that's exciting for me too, because that video you saw was done just north of Lincoln at Lake Wanahoo, and it's been an ongoing study for several years now. And they just put out a call for help the other day, and I think I'm going to have to go and help collect northern pike and help tag them. It's tough, but somebody has to do it. It's very enjoyable work. So then there's the fisheries management section of education and outreach, and that's what I do. There's 2 of us in the state. You met Daryl Bauer on the first video. I'm the second person. And we are in charge of doing things like making sure the people of Nebraska know what is going on, doing programs exactly like tonight. I also, as part of my educational endeavors, and outreach, I do a lot of how-to fishing programs. For instance, the brochure you see on the right here is a brochure from our 2019 fishing events. We have fishing events across Nebraska. This brochure contains the information on over 70 events where we show up at a lake and we teach people how to fish. So moms and dads and their kids can come and join us with no pressure. We have the rods, reels, and equipment ready to go, and we can help you learn how to fish. And we do a lot of programs like this. I, of course, don't do all of those programs myself. I just don't have that much time, and Nebraska is a pretty large state. So one of my job is also to have youth fishing instructors, and these are volunteers that are positioned across the state. These are people that have an interest in fishing, and they want to help others learn how to fish. And they come to me, we do a class, and they learn how to do these programs, and they conduct a lot of these fishing events all across Nebraska. So anyway, that's fisheries, that's education and outreach. It's what I do and it's what I love. Been doing it for over 15 years now and wouldn't have anything else. Just a little bit about fisheries careers. I've made it sound really exciting to be a fisheries manager or fisheries management, and because it really is. The same can be said also for the wildlife, and the people that work at Game and Parks generally get here and we kind of stay here for a life. A lot of us start here and 25 years, 30 years later, then we finally retire. There's that much passion about the people who work here. I'm going to show a quick video by one of our biologists. His name is Jordan Cott. He still works here. He's a good friend of mine, and he has some honest opinions on fisheries career.
My name's Jordan Cott, and I'm a fisheries biologist with the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. As a fisheries biologist, we're responsible for managing the public waters in the state, and for me specifically, I'm in southeast Nebraska, so we got about 120 different water bodies that we manage. And by managing them, we have three main components. We have the fish themselves and other living organisms in the lake. We have the habitat, and then we have the people. And so we try to manipulate those three things to get the best possible fishing outcome for each lake. I graduated from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln with my Bachelor's of Science in Fisheries and Wildlife. And then I went to the University of Nebraska-Kearney and got my master's in biology, and with a focus on fishery science. My first job was actually with the Game and Parks Commission after my first year of college, helping do kids fishing clinics, where we'd basically take kids out and give them poles and bait and let them go fishing for the afternoon. Yesterday I spent preparing for an upcoming northern pike collection effort at one of our local lakes. Maintaining email contacts with all the help, preparing our sampling gear, and coming up with a game plan for when we go out. As a fisheries biologist, you can expect to make about $30,000 to $40,000 a year, and that goes pretty much throughout the whole Midwest. If you get out on the coast, it's a little bit more, but your cost of living is higher, so it's about the same. Volunteer is always a good way. We have a lot of job shadow students that come out in the spring and fall with us when we're doing our surveys out on the lakes, so that's another good way to get into the field and just kind of experience what it's like. We have temporary positions during the summers, so that's a good way. And like I said, just volunteering, coming out with us and just getting to know what we do is going to be the best way to see if this is a field for you. Get an idea of where you want to end up. So if you want to be a fisheries biologist, most universities are going to have a set of courses that'll direct you into the fisheries field, or if you want to be in wildlife, they're going to have a set of courses that'll prepare you for that. Same thing with education, those types of things. So, it's a lot of math and science, but it's applied math and science, so it's not just the boring stuff. It's actually applied, and it's pretty fun.
So with that, and we've kind of buzzed through this pretty fast, and we have plenty of time for questions. And I saw one already on the chat. So anyway, here's the last quiz of the night. So Anybody can identify that fish that is, I'm holding up there on the screen? And that's the question. And put your answers in the chat if you will. Um, and with that, I am open for questions.
It looks like we have a couple in the Q&A part. Are there aquaculture in Nebraska? Are there any ice fishing clinics? And what is the reason for the turkey feathers with stirring the walleye eggs?
Okay. Aquaculture in Nebraska. Yes, there's definitely aquaculture in Nebraska. That's the fish production that I was talking about. The fish production, like I said, we have 5 facilities across the state, 5 state aquaculture or hatcheries, we call them. And so there's one in North Platte. It basically does warm water fish, things like bass, bluegill, crappie, those sort of fish. We have one in out by Benkelman at Rock Creek, and they are a cold water hatchery. So we have fish that definitely need cold water. So they do things like trout, smallmouth bass, yellow perch. We have another one in where is our other hatcheries? Valentine. And Valentine specifically, I mean, they raise just about everything. And they have some cold water facilities or capacity as well as, but they do a lot of our bass and bluegill. There's a big hatchery at Calamus, and if you ever visit Calamus, it's down below the dam, and you can see it from driving across the dam. They raise just about everything, and that's where a lot of our walleye start. When we do our walleye eggs, that's where they're taken. They have the facilities to hatch those eggs out. And then we have Grove Trout Rearing Station. Their whole purpose, absolutely beautiful park with a stream winding through it, and in that stream is where they raise the trout. So the trout are hatched in other facilities like at Calamus and at North Platte, and then taken to Grove Trout Rearing Station to grow up. So yes, we have a lot of aquaculture in Nebraska. Plus there's a lot of private aquaculture facilities. So, and let me see, can you tell me? Lake upcoming, I'm just reading down the list here of what I can see. Upcoming lake renovations from David Dickinson. Yes, what we mean by lake renovations is where we drain a lake and we remove the fish, usually with a toxicant called rotenone, where it poisons them, and then we start the lake over. We have one specifically in the Lincoln area. It's called Wagon Train Lake, and it's currently being drawn down. They've been doing some habitat structures on the lake, and which means dragging cedar trees on it. And we're planning on killing it this spring and then starting it over. The reason we did that is because it got carp, shad, and white perch in it. And once it gets those fish in it, it's really hard to manage anything else, and it's very difficult to get a good fishery. So that one will be out of production for about 2 years, and after that, it'll come back strong. They usually come back really strong. Most common fish stocked in Nebraska, either the channel catfish or the walleye. Channel catfish are stocked, oh man, there's a lot of them. And rainbow trout. Rainbow trout are stocked all across Nebraska. Walleye are stocked across Nebraska, and channel catfish. And if you catch any of those just about anywhere in Nebraska in a lake, more than likely they were created in a hatchery. The questions that I can see, what is the easiest fish to catch in Nebraska? I absolutely love bluegill or green sunfish, and they are literally everywhere. And you can find them literally all across Nebraska, and all it takes is a small hook and a piece of worm, piece of grasshopper, piece of lunch meat, piece of corn, and you can catch bluegill and or green sunfish. As a landowner, how do you reach out to Game and Parks to stock a lake? Basically, you would contact us and we would put you in charge with our private lands management person. The person was named Jeff. They just recently retired, but right now we can assign you to one of our local regional biologists, and they can help you work through the paperwork and stuff and the qualifications to stock a private resource. We also have lists of private aquaculturists who will sell you fish. And that list, of course, is the fish that we've recognized that are clean and healthy. So it's just simply by contacting us. You can call me, you can call the main office, and they can put you in touch with the people that can give you that information. When can we go fishing together? I'm going to start doing my family fishing events in May, and you'd be more than welcome to come fishing with me. If you want to come and be a youth fishing instructor, I've got those programs going on from now through May, and we'll keep you busy, and we can fish all summer long. We've got a lot of things going on. And what endangered fish are in Nebraska, and how can we help? Oh, well, there's one of the big endangered fish in Nebraska is a pallid sturgeon, and we don't encounter those very much because they're on the big river like the Missouri River and the Platte River, and so we don't encounter those much, and so we're really not much of a challenge to them. There are people that actually fish for shovel-nosed sturgeon, which are very similar. And if you fish for shovel-nosed sturgeon, you really need to know tell the difference, because you don't want to keep a pallid sturgeon, because it's a pretty hefty fine if you get caught, and it's just a bad idea to keep a fish that is a 1 in a million fish. Otherwise, all across Nebraska, just making sure that streams have good water quality, because there are a lot of less conspicuous fish, such as a plains a plains top minnow, that are endangered. Habitat is their key, making sure we don't pollute them, making sure we don't overgraze their shorelines, making sure that they have habitat. And you can visit our website, because we have sections on those endangered fish that'll tell you all about it and where they reside and what their needs are. So the next question is, are there different techniques for catching fish in rivers and ponds? Yes, there are actually different techniques. Professionally, with the fish management in rivers, we use a lot of things like set lines, where it's a long string with a lot of hooks tied to it, and you bait all those hooks, and you would use that to catch the fish in a river, fish like sturgeon that we talked about, fish like catfish. We would never consider using that in a lake, because we don't need to. We have trap nets and gill nets, which are difficult to run in rivers because of the flow and the debris that's in them. But those kind of techniques work very well in ponds. With respect to actually fishing, yeah, there are some fine details with rod and reel fishing between rivers and ponds. And if you give me a call, we can talk about it if you're interested in trying to find one way or the other. Yeah, there was one question earlier, and I saw, and it's disappeared. I do want to answer it because I don't want it to get by. And somebody asked, why the turkey feather to stir the eggs? Because turkey feathers are very gentle. When they're wet, they're very gentle, and they don't bump the eggs dramatically, and so they're very easy on the eggs when they go to mix the fuller's earth, as well as when they go to do the actual spawn of the sperm and the egg. And also goose feathers are used as well. They're plentiful. As hunters, all of us, we just contribute our turkey feathers to the hatchery, and they have more than enough. So that's the biggie. They're plentiful and they're free, and they work very well. So where will the fishing academies be later this spring? I'm assuming you mean if the youth fishing instructor trainings. If that's what you're referring to, we are holding those in Ponca this weekend, actually this Sunday. We're having one at Schramm Park, which is just outside of Gretna, on the 27th of March. I'm looking at my calendar. We're having one in Lincoln on the 24th of April, and we're having one in Kearney on the 4th of April, and one in Lincoln on the 22nd of April. And all you have to do is call me to find those out. with respect to fishing clinics, teaching people how to fish, we have a lot of those coming up across spring, but especially starting in May. And we'll be doing fishing clinics throughout the summer, starting in the very end of May, all the way through August. And the best thing to do is just contact us at the agency. And a lot of those will actually be posted on our agency calendar. And so.
While we're on that one, someone did ask what the youth fishing instructor certification class entails.
The fishing instructor certification class it's a program that started actually in 1982. Certified youth fishing instructors, about 300 of them that are active statewide every year. The certified fishing instructor has available from us rods and reels, fishing trailer ready to go with fishing. They have access to each other. We have a community that we put them in touch with each other so we can, cooperate in terms of doing programs, fishing clinics like the Walleye Association and a lot of other organizations like bass organizations, the Trout Unlimited, the Cornhusker Fly Fishers do these things. And we cooperate and help each other doing those. To become a certified instructor is to come to the class. It's about 3 hours long. We teach you about the things that are available for you, the things you can do and cooperate, different kinds of programs you can help us on and help others with, and how we can help you do your programs, and then the rights and responsibilities of being a representative of Game and Parks, and things to do to make sure you're acting appropriately on our behalf. And so I see a question that says, are there any sustainable fishing lines like compostable? Oh my gosh, I really wish there were. No, I don't know of any fishing line that is actually environmentally friendly. That is one of the things that is very regrettable about fishing. The other regrettable thing is like the styrofoam bait containers. They're not as biodegradable as we would like. What we encourage, and we have a partner organization called the Nebraska Fish and Game Association that actually runs fishing line recycling bins. And you'll find these at lakes. There's one right here in our office here in Lincoln. And these are plastic tubes. So when you have recycled or fishing line that you're no longer using, you've changed it on your fishing rod and reel, and you want to get rid of it, you can take it to one of those tubes and put it in those tubes. Or if you're fishing and you find some that's strung out along the shoreline, you can collect it and put it there. If you can't find one of those, please pick up fishing line and put it in the waste. At minimum, put it in a waste receptacle. I can't tell you how many birds, crayfish, muskrats, and other things I've found in my history of working as a fisheries manager that have gotten tangled in fishing line and perish that way. And it would be a horrible way to go. So please be very responsible with your fishing line. Where can I fly fish in Nebraska? From Jack K. Wow. You can fish. I'm an avid fly fisherman. I'm fanatic about fly fishing, and I live here in Lincoln. And my absolute favorite place to fly fish is Holmes Lake here in Lincoln. And the reason I say that is because I love fishing for bluegill because they just put up a heck of a fight. And Holmes Lake here in Lincoln is full of bluegill. Plus, the resources are perfect for fly fishing. You have these nice mowed areas with where you can cast and you don't have to worry about your back cast. And for me, it's perfect. I can go from work here and in 3 minutes be at Holmes Lake and fishing. And there's a big community of us that fish at Holmes Lake. But that being said, anywhere in Nebraska, any water, any kind of fish is available for fly fishing. For trout, we stock trout across Nebraska, but there are other resources like by Grove Lake, the Grove Trout Rearing Hatchery. There's a fantastic trout stream there if that's what you're fly fishing after. So, and I have a question from Jim, and it says, is Nebraska Game and Parks concerned by the advanced technology in fishing electronics and the increasing fish catch rate? Yes and no. Yes, we're concerned because it makes fishermen so absolutely great at predators. But one of the things we know is the people that are that advanced with respect to having that kind of fishing advanced technology generally are pretty responsible anglers. And in a lot of cases will only take what there is, you know, um, responsible or appropriate. And so not too much worried about those who actually have the technology. They're pretty good people. They're not the kind of people that would over harvest or pillage things beyond repair. Um, so
I know we did have someone ask, oh, there it is. Are there any ice fishing clinics?
any ice fishing? Is that correct? Ice fishing?
Yes, are there any ice fishing clinics?
But we had two ice fishing clinics, and they were a couple weeks past. And I'm glad we had them when we did, because unfortunately, the ice especially across the southern portions in central Nebraska, has disappeared this year. So we don't have any more planned ice fishing clinics yet this year, because quite honestly, in most cases, the ice is just not safe anymore. But if you want to know more information about what ice is safe, there is a really good resource. It's called the Nebraska Fish and Game Association, NEFGA. And if you Google that and you get on their forum, they have a section on it that has discussion, and it talks about who's been where and what people think is safe. And mostly they'll post what they experience. They're not going to tell you it's safe, because you need to discover that yourself with the appropriate methods. But so that right now, if you want to do ice fishing, would go on a Nebraska Fish and Game Association forum, find out what is safe. If you're a beginner, you might join that forum and ask somebody to help you learn how to ice fish, because a lot of those guys that are on that forum specifically are the ones who help us do the ice fishing clinics, and they would be the ones to ask for help. And I wouldn't be afraid to go on that forum if I were you and just say, hey, I want to learn how to ice fish. Will you take me? And I'm betting you have a pickup or two. So a question from Martin Hernandez, and it says, what is the difference between bait fishing and bait casting? Well, bait fishing is effectively working with something that's organic, using a minnow, using a worm. I also call, one of my favorite baits is a hot dog. It's not messy, it's clean, and it's cheap. And I use them specifically for like catfish, my favorite go-to bait. Bait casting, I'm assuming what you mean is like casting like artificial lures, spinners, different things like that. And that's very active fishing. As for instance, when I fly fish, albeit the lure is tiny, tiny, it's just a little fly. But that is what I'm assuming you mean by the bait casting, is casting something that is artificial. It's not made out of something organic.
All right. If anybody has any last minute questions, drop them in there real quick. We'll try and get to them. But I just want to say thank you to Larry. That was very informative. And thank you to all participants who are still left. We will send a follow-up email with all of the resources that we talked about in the presentation. And we'll also have a recording made available a little bit later. But again, thank you, Larry, and thank you everyone else for coming. Oh, what was the fish that was up on your screen, by the way?
Oh, it is a rock bass. In eastern Nebraska, they're not terribly common. In western Nebraska, they are so, and it is a rock bass. And the reason I put it up there is because it isn't very common in eastern Nebraska. But I caught this one out of Salt Creek, right by Devaney Sport Complex, and while I was fly fishing. And it was quite a surprise to me because I'm a fisheries biologist and I know where they exist. And I happen to know that this rock bass was probably stocked in Conestoga Lake, probably swam out and got washed out of Conestoga Lake, made it down Salt Creek to the point where I actually caught it, which I find absolutely amazing. And so it's a rock bass, very common in western Nebraska, not so much here. You will find them at Conestoga Lake near Lincoln, where we've stocked them.
Looks like we have another one. Other than being a youth fishing instructor, is there any other volunteer opportunities with the Nebraska Game and Parks?
Yes, occasionally our fisheries management people will ask people to go along to help them do some of the management stuff. I just saw an email within the past day about them asking for help to do that Wanahoo pike study, because they go for a week long every day, or up to 2 weeks long, where they run nets every day, and it's pretty labor intensive. And so, yes, they will occasionally, the management section will ask for assistance to do those kinds of activities. The best thing for you to do to find out about those is to contact me, and I can reassign you and contact you wherever you are in the state with the people who do those managers, and suggest someone that you could ask the question specifically if they need help.
It looks like that might be all of the questions that we have right now. Again, we will send a follow-up email with all of these resources for everyone who attended, even those who have left, and the recording will be made available. Thank you to Larry and everyone. I hope you have a good night.
Thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed it.